Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar. We are very excited about it. This is for the launch or release of our new update to Lockpoint, so Lockpoint 6.12. And it is being released or was released yesterday, or yeah. Today I am joined by my colleague Nils Krumrey, who will make us all a little bit more insightful about this really exciting update. So just a short introduction of who you're talking to today is my name is Gitte Gade. I'm a product marketing manager here with Lockpoint. And with me, I have Nils Krumrey, as mentioned, as the enterprise sales engineer. And I think we would prefer that if you have any questions going along the way, that you put them in the chat, and then Nils will go through them once he's finished with his presentation. So please feel free to put in all the questions that you have. I don't think we will be using all the time that we have reserved for this session. So there should be a lot of time for questions. And you're also very happy to contact us if you have further questions. So I think I will leave the word to you, Nils, and get the show started.
All right, thank you. I'll share my screen if I may. There we go. So once again, thank you for joining us. And yeah, I prepared one slide only to give you a bit of an overview as to where we've come from and where we're going. And you might have seen our announcement a few weeks ago on us acquiring SEC BI so that we can incorporate a source solution into Lockpoint. And in a way, we've been on this journey for quite a few versions. You might remember Lockpoint 6.9 is where we introduced the MITRE ATT&CK visualization, which was really about the outcome of the alerts, where we were able to map them against MITRE and make it a bit easier to understand what is happening in your environment and what categories it's happening in. Overall, though, alerting in general is one of the key requirements for customers that want to deploy a SIEM. And we've heard from time to time that customers are struggling to just get started with it. So the MITRE visualization is really useful when you have your alert rules in place. But what people struggle with is really making a decision: what are the useful alerts, which alerts are there in Lockpoint, and so on. So you can see that incrementally we've released new functionality around MITRE and around the alert rule sharing. And essentially the goal that we're moving towards is giving customers more tools to deal with the alerts that they receive. And that's why we have introduced alert categorization in Lockpoint 6.12. And that's both for managing the incidents as they happen, as well as then potentially using that extra information to feed into either our own or third-party systems to take perhaps automated actions on that. And at the same time, there's things like XDR, there's our own UEBA solution, which you'll also see is aligning more closely with MITRE, so that ultimately it becomes easier to enable the right alert rules and then to manage the alerts and incidents as they happen within Lockpoint or in any other tool that you might want to use. So that's the journey we've been on, and hopefully you'll see the fruits of our labor, especially now with 6.12. And I'm going to just switch to my environment. So I'll start with the incident view. For any of you that are hopefully familiar with that, it will look a bit different when you bring it up. And you might notice that these alerts now have additional metadata right in the incident view. And the incident view is a timeline of all the incidents that are triggered in your Lockpoint based on the alert rules that you have set up. So we did have MITRE visualization for the incidents after they've been raised, but this metadata forms part of the alert rule, so to speak. And you can almost think of it as taxonomy for the alert rules, just like we have it for the log data. so that it then becomes easier for both the analysts as well as any kind of third-party systems to identify incidents, classify them, trigger different workflows, and so on the basis of the additional information that's contained. But it also has really tangible benefits when you're just trying to manage the alerts as they come in. So you can see on the left-hand side that we've got what we call attack categories and attack tags that you can now filter on. And that's reflected in this metadata on each incident as it appears. Categories are the tactics in MITRE, and tags are the techniques. But there's nothing to say that we couldn't have other frameworks that feed into the same kind of verbiage. And you can see if you click on that, you immediately get the tactics kind of popped out for you that are available in the system. If you just want to see anything to do with the initial access stages, you can just click on that and it filters your incidents that way. And that's something that we've heard a lot, that this timeline is nice, but how do I deal with potentially lots and lots of incidents that might be happening in there? And I can do the same thing with a tag. That's the technique, even more specifically, all the ones that are available in the system, which anyone familiar with MITRE will hopefully recognize. And then also really useful, being able to filter on the log sources that actually led to those alert rules in Lockpoint. So again, if you just want to know what were the alerts for Windows or the incidents, you can filter on that and it filters that down to the Windows incidents. So that's kind of at the end stage when an incident has been raised. As you can imagine, that information can then be used both within Lockpoint if you do want any reporting, if you want to build your own dashboards, but also through the incident API, that information is available to third-party systems that can then do things like give me all your exfiltration incidents, and based on that, I'm going to do something. So you can see that this is a stepping stone towards the SAW integration. So if we look behind the scenes and how this happens, if we look at the alert rules, the view that you're presented with initially looks very similar to what we've always had. This is a breakdown. These are my rules, i.e. the rules that this Lockpoint user has currently activated in the system. And there's the vendor rules, which is the pre-built rules that we've had a lot of previously. The only information available here is and always has been the description field, which may or may not be terribly useful. And if you did something like search for a specific MITRE ID, then in some cases you would find something if it's part of the description, but otherwise we might have an alert for that already pre-built, but you wouldn't find it just by searching for it. Also, you might notice that this used to be 50 something pages. It's now 43. So we've over a few releases, and people might not have noticed, we've gone through the alert rules over and over again, and it's an ongoing process. We keep doing that to maybe get rid of some that aren't relevant anymore or aren't particularly useful. We've also split some out into other packages that are more relevant to specific vendors and so on. So you might see some activity in that area. But what's really exciting is that up here you see a new option. And this is independent from all these rules that might be selecting here. And there's two new views. One is the tabular view. And if I select that, you get a view of all the alert rules in the system. That's both the ones that are active as well as the ones that are vendor rules and are predefined. You can filter on the active ones if you click up here. And if you do that, that is pretty much my rules because they are the active ones. But more importantly, you get these extra columns here, which is the additional metadata that's now baked into all of the pre-built alerts. And you can see some of the ones that I had previously created. I've augmented myself with a log source at least, and I'll show you later how you can do that with your own alert rules. So that's really useful because you get this categorization through the techniques and tactics. If you now search for a tag, then I think it's there we go. So if you remember the right tag ID, then you can find your MITRE rules that might be aligned to that specific technique. And also really useful, again, is the log source. So if you want to know what can I do for my antivirus solutions, or what can I do for my just Windows logs, you can quickly filter on that, and it brings up all the alert rules for that specific log source. So that's kind of one way of looking at the alert rules. And then the other one is this coverage view, which is, again, if you see MITRE in Lockpoint, looks familiar. It is one for one the MITRE framework. But this is a view of the alert rules in the system against the framework. So not like what we've had in 6.9, which is the outcome of the incidents. This is the defined incidents, alert rules that lead to the incidents. And as always with MITRE and Lockpoint, the darker the color here, the more rules are active. So you can see here there's 1 out of 17 rules active, a very light color, 1 out of 7, a bit more dark. So that is another really useful way of seeing which alert rules do you have activated and maybe what other alert rules are there available in certain areas. So if you're focusing on a specific tactic, maybe the initial access or very late the exfiltration, if you click on one of these, you can quickly get to just the alert rules that are predefined for this technique and tactic. And you might be able to have this one active, but oh, okay, there's another rule, printing. That's one way of exfiltrating data. Maybe you want to activate that rule. And as I said, the challenge has always been, if you look at the rule, you aren't immediately able to spot what device is it for. So from this view, you can see, so this one relies on a log source endpoint protector. If you are not using the endpoint protector product, that alert rule is not one that what would make sense to enable because you wouldn't have the logs for it. So again, that's really useful here, and you can activate or clone these rules straight from here. So that's really the most visible change. That does extend as far as if I run a search and I create an incident from here, I can show you the new options that you get, and they are the same for both the ad hoc incidents that you're generating, as well as the incidents that are, or the alert rules that are predefined. So firstly, you can configure an attack tag, which you can see here. These are all the techniques. I can select a technique ID if I think that's what I'm kind of alerting on. And then the category gets pre-filled, so the tactic gets pre-filled automatically. And then also you can specify what log sources they are. So they could be my Windows systems or whatever you'd want it to be. And you can then later filter on that in those views that I've shown you. And you can create your own metadata that will be added to those alert rules. So it could be something like maybe a revision ID, and you give that a value every time you change the alert rule, whatever it is that you might be able to think up. And that very same option is available when you edit existing alert rules. So if you create your own alert rules and you think they really fit into this MITRE framework, then you can give it the right attack ID and the right tactic. And equally, if you have existing ones and you want to change them somehow, it's not a secret behind the scenes setting. It's really exposed to you. Which then ultimately leads to us being able to use that information in the incident APIs and also in the notification templates, so that you can see that immediately. And then also that's available, as I said, to third-party systems that can query Lockpoint, group incidents on that basis, and then hopefully ultimately take action if that's the route you want to go down. So I'm quite confident that a lot of you will be glad to see this, because it is feedback that we've had in the past, and we want to make it easier to enable alert rules and to manage the alerts and incidents as they happen. This is by no means the end of the journey. This will continue to evolve, and we'll be continuing to work on those alert rules, but at least it gives you, yet more capabilities in that area. And it sets us up nicely for the future, as you've heard. And I think that's all I had to share this stage. So if there are any questions, I think now would be a good time to ask them in the chat. I'll just give it a little bit of time. There's some that have come in already. So one was on the Sysmon configuration, that you might need to enable some of the MITRE alerts. So firstly, you might have spotted when I filtered on log sources, there is a specific category that's assigned to certain alert rules for the ones that need Windows Sysmon logs. There are certain kind of open source Sysmon configurations that we can certainly point you at that try to map Sysmon configurations against MITRE. It's not one that we've done ourselves, at least not yet. But there are various different repositories out there for kind of minimalist Sysmon configs that try to limit the noise that Sysmon might generate. Not all of the MITRE rules require Sysmon, but it's a good one to have. And again, watch this space. There's kind of additional things that we're doing in that area. Then there was a question when Lockpoint will be upgraded. So 6.12 has been released, I think, last night. And if you are on 6.11.1, I think you can go straight to 6.12. Obviously, if you have a kind of managed service or managed instance, then it will be up to your service provider to upgrade you. But everyone else, it's available right now and you can upgrade. And then the question where I can find the information, which log source is required for the different alerts. So we try to do that. I can share my screen again. In the definition of the alert rules. So if we go back to that and we have a look at the tabular view, this log source column and that you can select up here should give you reasonable coverage to kind of select what it is that you actually want to have alerts for. This is probably the extent of the pre-built alert rules that we have at the moment. You could obviously, for example, if you don't have a FortiGate firewall, you could look at those and maybe use those rules and make them your own. And when you clone one of these, let's do that. You can edit that later. And as I said, there is a new option here now where you can select the metadata that goes along with it. So if you change this alert rule and maybe you now turn it into an alert rule for Cisco, you can literally just type that in and this becomes a field that's now attached to that rule, and that can later be filtered on both in the coverage views and so on, but also in the incidents when they arrive. So this is nicely dynamic. It's something that we can keep changing and adding to over time, and B, something that you can start using yourself and building your entire taxonomy around. So hopefully that's helpful as well. Okay. I think that's all already. There are quite a few other changes in Lockpoint as always. The release notes are quite comprehensive and nicely categorized now, so you'll see what the different changes are. Just one word on sharing, because that was in the agenda. So that's another change that's happened over the last few releases. You might have noticed we started out with dashboard sharing and changed the way that works, and I think we've now finished all those elements. You can now do report sharing, alert rule sharing, and 6.11 was there already. So the behavior has changed a bit, where you can select who has read access and who has edit access to the things that you are sharing. So that will hopefully be useful as well. But there's quite a lot of other things under the cover, but I didn't want to detract from the big headline feature in 6.12.
Yeah, and I don't see any more questions that we need to have an answer to. But again, if anything comes up, please feel free to. One came in. Okay. So yeah, but feel free to reach out if you have additional questions, either via your partner or us directly. There's one coming in now.
There are
yeah.
comments. So one was just that it's an easy update, which it is, and in terms of how we would categorize it, you might have seen the 6.11 upgrade. It did actually go fairly smoothly in the end, but it did have an Ubuntu upgrade underneath. This is not like that. It's a smaller download and it's a smaller upgrade. In terms of functionality, though, this change is probably more visible than a lot of other things that we've seen in Lockpoint so far. And when will the training be updated? Probably not in time for the training course next week. That's all I can say. But it does kind of get updated alongside. But if you're stuck with me, I might mention it anyway. So
yeah, okay. But I think you were super fast today, Nils. That's clear and to the point. That was delightful. And thank you all for joining us for today. And yeah, we hope to see you to more of our webinars in the future. But have a good afternoon.